Hello, this is Truth Be Told Transformation, and I'm Bonnie Burkert, here to share tools for transformation to live your highest truth. What is truth? What is your true you? Well, I feel and I have felt this way for, I think, how long have I been doing yoga? Over 40 years, that yoga can really help you find that truth. And really, it all starts with the breath. And there's all kinds of other ways to approach yoga. It doesn't just have to be about the stretching and exercises. So I've invited to my show a yoga instructor to talk to us more and tell us her philosophies on this. Welcome, Jennifer. Jennifer, whose last name is so beautiful, and I'm just going to butcher it, so I ask you to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hi, Bonnie. Thanks so much for having me.
Karuletwa, is it right?
Karuletwa, that's it.
Okay, well, you see, sometimes if you think too hard about it, it doesn't come.
That's right.
But it is a true pleasure, and welcome, Jennifer Karuletwa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Namaste. So, Jennifer, you are going to be joining us at the Parapod Festival. This is our first ever event held by Team Truth Be Told. And this is happening in Santa Clarita on April 1st, March 31st. So I just want to let you know that we're really excited to have you. You're going to be kicking things off in the Transformation Garden. Tell us a little bit about what to expect from your, you as a teacher, really starting the day for us at the Parapod Festival.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. Honored that I get to share the practice of yoga with everyone. I think whenever, for me anyway, whenever I get to share the practice with anyone, it's truly humbling, because this is a tradition that's been passed down for, hundreds of thousands of years. And yoga is something that I really feel strongly about passing on the true essence of yoga. I'm sure I'm not doing it perfectly, but it's something I really strive for as a teacher. And something that you mentioned, Bonnie, that I think is really important when it comes to yoga is that we don't do yoga to become better at yoga. We do better to become better at life.
Nice.
So yes, it does start with the breath. So myself as a teacher, I do teach Vinyasa yoga. I teach a more heated practice, which is quite different than Kundalini that you were mentioning. But it's still about linking breath with movement. And I always tell my students as well, even though I teach a heated practice and there is an element of endurance that gets brought into a Vinyasa practice, if you're staying connected to your breath, you're doing yoga. It really, the postures are irrelevant if you're doing it right or not. The posture is just an opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves and our minds, the way we think, and how we approach life.
Absolutely. And where we're at in this moment, right? I mean, it's going to be different every single day, and that's okay. And I really feel like, just being in a practice such as yoga, such as the Vinyasa, if you will, it's okay if there's going to be one day that you're less flexible, and just listen to it and do what you can, and no self-judgment. Because I think the minute you're judging yourself, right, you're taking yourself out of the true purpose of yoga, which is higher consciousness, right? I mean,
correct. Yes. Yeah. And the reality is, like I said, there's the postures are just a laboratory for observation. So the minute that we start judging, I mean, we're human beings, and judgment and, all of the things that our mind likes to do are part of being human. So I always encourage students to be really compassionate about, if judgments come up, just recognize it, because ultimately yoga is a moving meditation, and the essence of a meditation is to take the seat of the seer or the observer. So even though you're observing yourself, can you almost step back from your physical body and notice your thought patterns, or what the yogis call samskara, these habits that become ingrained in our mind? Can we bring them into light, like we're saying, into consciousness, and then just see it for how it is, and even turn, this idea of compassion towards ourselves, and just say, you know what? I'm human. I'm hard on myself. I'm going to judge, and then just let it go. Be willing to let it go and move on.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, and because these are samskaras would be considered one of the 8 limbs of yoga, right? Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga. Is that right?
So samskaras are actually habits.
Okay.
Samskaras are habits. So the 8 limbs are the yamas, the niyamas, asana, pranayama, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi.
Okay.
And I'm missing one because that's seven. My humanity and my mistake is coming up. But samaskara sounds a lot like samadhi, but it's actually habits that are ingrained in our mind.
Samaskara. No, I really really like that, and I like that you're giving us the distinction and the fact that the ancients saw that, had a name
Yes.
for it,
Yes.
right, and ideally a
Yeah.
way through it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the ways that I talk about, I think pratyahara, I might have missed pratyahara in my eight limbs now it's coming
Oh,
to me, but pratyahara is inward turn in one of the eight limbs of yoga. But
that's really
yeah,
cool.
the yogis, because it has to do with the mind and this idea of bringing light to our samaskaras or our habits, on a neurological level too. I know some people kind of shy away from yoga because it may feel too mystical or too woo woo, but it's actually a science.
Yeah.
And if you look at samaskaras from a neurological point of view, when we have a habit or a pattern, it literally ingrains like a cornfield, like a plow going through a cornfield. It literally makes ingrainments in our brain and our neurological pathways.
Yeah.
So we have to train our brains to do something different. And it requires patience, it requires compassion. And the first step of doing something different, like anything, is having the awareness. So, on the mat when I'm teaching, a lot of times, there's always a period at the beginning of a vinyasa class when maybe we're coming into our first Adho Mukha Svanasana, the downward facing dog, where some teachers really cue like a foot pedaling movement to kind of open up the backs of the legs
Right.
and things like that. And I'm not against these kinds of movements, but I'll ask my students, do you need to move, or is this a samaskara, or is it just a habit that
Oh,
you come to the mat and you have to keep moving? Because and if
guilty.
the answer is you have to keep
Guilty.
moving to like get it out, then do it. But let's do it consciously.
Well, and just be careful that you're not just the continual adjusting, because we are a
Yes.
society of feeling like we always have to continue to upgrade, if you will, like the continual
Yes.
movement and sort of tweaking, right? Isn't that
Yes.
sort of what
Yes.
we feel like we're doing? It's never done, and we're always
Yes.
striving for more and better. And that
Yes.
in general is good, but if you're trying to really be at peace, you mentioned self-judgment. I love to kind of work on, we all probably need to look at that and work on that. But it's
Yeah.
really ultimately getting to inner peace. So I like what you said about that,
Yep.
because I do what you just described about sort of getting into a posture and then
Yes.
fiddling around with it. I do that. I do that. And I remember one of my teachers saying that too. It's just like, why do I feel like I have to keep moving? It's just like, find the
Yes.
meditation in the posture. You get into it
Yeah.
and then find the meditation there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I
It's
think,
it's a
yeah,
steadiness.
yeah. No, I'm
Yeah,
glad you brought that
it's
up
funny.
for us.
I was just listening to actually a teacher that I follow, and I taught a class last night. The theme was Sthira Asana, which is steadiness with ease. That every one of our
Mm.
postures, there's a sense of steadiness, there's a sense of stableness, but there's also a sense of ease. So
Okay.
even if you may be in a posture where it's recruiting a lot of strength of the muscles, or whatever it may be, can your breath be calm? Do you need to modify? Can we pull back from the ego, for instance, and modify and create a sense of softness so we can work in increments to get stronger? But I was just listening to a teacher that was talking about stiram. It's steadiness. So, normally when we hold a posture, it's for 5 to 8 rounds of breath, for instance. And this concept is get into the pose, find the gross movements, right? There are the physical movements that you have to get into the posture. But then can you find steadiness? Can you still the mind? Can you still the breath? And can you stay steady? It's the steadiness of the body that then translates to the steadiness of the mind.
And vice versa too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the in the 8 limbs of yoga that you were mentioning, they're in order for a reason. So the yamas, for instance, are social observances. How do we interact with each other? The niyamas are how do we interact with ourselves, for instance. Asana is the 3rd limb, which is the physical postures. Then there is pranayama, the breath work. Then there is pratyahara. dharana, concentration, dhyana, meditation, and then samadhi. So samadhi, this idea of total bliss, intentionally comes after asana, which is the physical movements, because once our body becomes comfortable, asana literally means comfortable seat. So we have to get the fidgets out of our body. We have to open the body, because if you just sit down and try to still the mind, I think a lot of people that meditate would all agree it's very difficult to steady the mind prior to doing the asana. So in Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga, it's very much that the physical posture has to come before the stilling of the mind. Because living in today's Western world and modern society, I mean, let's face it, we're, sitting in chairs, especially in Los Angeles, we're sitting in cars. We're not sitting cross-legged on the floor eating like they may be doing in Eastern cultures. So we have to get that physical aspect of our yoga practice as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget my first exposure to meditation was through Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism, and it was definitely sitting
Cool.
still in front of an altar, and I think I can't remember. We didn't gaze at something, so our eyes were closed. But anyway, it was beads, it was chanting, and it was definitely sitting still, and I couldn't do it. It was really hard, and I was chanting, and I think I might have been also moving beats, so I wasn't even completely still, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I therefore sought out Hatha Yoga, and
Yeah.
just to better to find it, to find that peace, and to have the movement. And I remember also learning that those postures were developed so that the ancient yogis could sit for longer periods of
Yes.
time. When I heard
Exactly.
that, it was like, wow, that was really
Yeah.
mind blowing
Yeah.
and a huge aha for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also in like I was saying, there's an endurance aspect and there is a strengthening aspect to vinyasa yoga. But the idea too is, like you're saying, when to sit for long periods of time, your lung and to do pranayama, for instance, to do the breathing work, your body has to be conditioned. If your abdomen or your back muscles are part of your core as well. But if the physicality of your body is not conditioned, you won't be able to find that comfortable seat for an extended period of time. And also too, like you're saying, I think it's really important that we recognize what works for us may not work for another. And when it comes to spiritual practice, like you're saying, there's people that can, sit with a mala and do their prayer beads and count and sit still for long periods of time. I know for myself, what I've had to learn is I can go deeper into my meditation by through movement. It's what works for me. And there's so many, even different kinds of yoga. Like you were saying, you like Kundalini, I like Vinyasa. I've tried Kundalini, it's not for me. So, really respecting the different practices and that they all work, but they work for different people for different reasons.
Yeah. I mean, if I may comment specifically, I know that, I mentioned Hatha Yoga. That was definitely my foundation. And then I did start doing more Vinyasa Yoga. And I really enjoyed
Yeah.
the heat and the exercise and getting deep into the muscles. And for me,
Yes.
however, I've always had really tight hamstrings. So
Mm.
often the going into down dog as often as one does in the series was hard for me. And so when I
Yeah.
found Kundalini Yoga, I liked the repetition because it helped
Yeah.
me warm up, warm up, warm up, and then I found better flexibility through it. So there's, like you say, there's just
Sure.
so many different ways, and it is not a one size fits all. And I hope that
That's
people
right.
know that there are many approaches to yoga, and that's what Jennifer and I
Yeah.
both are here to share with you,
Yeah.
our experience. And even if you're, and we talked about this before we got on to on camera here, was off the mat as well,
Mm.
right? And so I think that that's what's fabulous about having you part of the Parapod Festival, Jennifer, is that we want people to experience a higher consciousness, certainly, but just a broader way of living life and experiencing life, and the possibilities, the mysteries of life. And I really feel that you bringing in a yoga practice to start off our day is really great. And I look forward, and we welcome people of all different levels of practice, right, to come and join you.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think what you said was important, what the comment that you had just made, Mani, because the idea that, my body is a certain way, so I can't do certain things, I really encourage people to show up and start where they're at. You don't need to be able to do crazy balances, arm balances, or inversions to get the benefits of yoga. But it's also telling. I always tell people, try. I still do poses that I can't do because it
Right.
keeps me humble. The purpose of me coming to after 20 to 25 years of practice, I still can't do everything, but I keep showing up and I keep trying because again, it's you never ultimately arrive, just like on the mat or in life. It's like you spend more time in transitions. Once you get there, you just move the carrot and then you try to then there's a new goalpost that you're trying to reach. And then this idea of reaching a higher consciousness, it's, when we come into this place and connect with our body and connect with our breath, and like you were saying, the ancient yogis had actually created these postures not only so that they can sit more comfortably for a long period of time, but it also opens up the energy channels in our own bodies. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of nadis, of energy channels running through our bodies. And when we're able to open this up and we're able to connect with the breath, what's happening is you end up going through the layers of the body. The first and foremost is the physical. So it's what the yogis call these kind of sheaths. And then ultimately the physical practice actually moves you closer to your bliss body, the Annamaya kosha. So you're able to really get in touch with your soul ultimately. And our souls are eternal. Our souls are not about this human experience. So there's so much knowledge that is already in our bodies, that if we can kind of tap into that higher sense of consciousness, it's in us. We just have to be able to quiet the mind to actually listen to the soul. And the mind is powerful and it's useful in many, many ways, but may not serve us when we're trying to listen to our deepest desires or, maybe access our intuition, which the practice of yoga actually allows us to do.
No, I love that very much so. Jennifer, in your bio, I was reading about the term Santosha. So
Yeah.
I titled our show, finding Santosha through yoga. So I hope that people see the title of our show and ask, what is
Yeah.
that? I want it. Tell
Yeah.
us more.
So again, Santosha is actually a Sanskrit word, but it means deep-seated contentment. And
Fantastic.
ultimately, I think anybody that's ever practiced yoga has, or meditation has maybe felt this way at the end of their practice. It's something that I have experienced firsthand. And it's something that doesn't come from outside of us. It's a deep-seated contentment based on our connection with our souls, with our breath. And many of the things that on the outside, materialism or whatever it may be, may bring us a temporary a sense of bliss or happiness. Not even bliss, I won't even use that word, coming from the material world, but it may give us a temporary fix of
I don't know,
happiness,
certain
let's just say.
chocolate maybe, but
Exactly. I'm a chocolate lover. I'm not going to hate on chocolate, but it's
pretty blissful.
Santosha is more of this, like I said, deep-seated contentment, not based on anything from outside of ourselves or anything materialistic. Because again, it's not sustainable. The things from the outside, material happiness or the feelings that we get from anything materialistic won't last. It's temporary, and then we just are left craving more chocolate. I end up craving more chocolate.
True. Yeah.
So yeah, Santosha, I think is definitely something that I feel after I practice, and I hope that my students take away as well.
Oh, yeah. It's a really beautiful term and certainly the ultimate goal, isn't it? And I
Yes.
remember, as somebody who has listened to hours and hours, probably, days or weeks worth of podcasts in my life, just to hear the concept of really, well, what do you want in your life? It's like, oh, I want,
Yes.
whatever, the house on the hill and the private jet or whatever, right? Okay, but no,
Yes.
really, what you want. I mean, it's like it's the feeling. It's the feeling of
Yes.
how do you want to be? I want to be
Yes.
happy. I want to be well. And so for
Yes.
you to pull this term Santosha for us, And as
Yeah.
somebody who's, I haven't actually come across that term, so I really like that. I really like
Oh, good.
the introduction to that, and that being something that's important in your practice and what you want to deliver for your students, or deliver. I mean,
Yeah,
what you want to invite your students to experience, right?
exactly.
Hey, I wish we all could deliver, that as easily for them. But I
Yeah.
think, isn't that
Yep.
ultimately the goal? Isn't that the goal of it all?
Yeah.
Is that contentment?
Yeah. Yeah. And I always tell people too, like you were saying, can I deliver it to them on a platter? I wish.
I had to
I don't
correct
think that
myself. Yeah.
Instacart is delivering Santosha yet these days. But if I always say to people, I'm your guide. I'm only your guide. You have to do the work, So again, because Santosha is something from the inside, I'm just guiding them through this practice, going back to my first statement, that I am humbled to be able to pass on.
Mm.
I didn't create the practice of yoga. I didn't create the word Santosha. I was taught by my teachers, and I want to pass it on to others as well. And going back to this idea that you were just saying of deep-seated contentment and what do we really want, and that's what brings the sense of Santosha. This is it for me, really shifted in the last couple of years and through my practice, is really where my sense of Santosha is going to come from is when I can live my dharma, my life's purpose. And each and every one of us have our own life's purpose. And we all have experience of maybe jealousy or, things like that. But the reality is no two souls on this planet have the same dharma. And truly my dharma is to serve the world with my special gifts. And the more I can do that, and the more I get the opportunity to actually, live my dharma through service, and live this kind of selfless life, but rather one of serving the people that need my gifts, is really where that sense of Santosha is going to come from. It's not going to come from a car or a private jet or, all of those things. So I think that's really important to highlight.
No, I really, really like that. Do you think that Dharma is, what's the word? Predestined. Do you think
Mm.
that we show up on our planet? Or do you feel like it evolves as you evolve?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a definitive answer to it.
Yeah.
I know that I believe from what I've studied, and again, this is just from my studies and my teachers and things like that, but it's what I've gathered, is that we're here to live to work out our karma. We're all put on this planet to work out some sort of karma. And again, because I subscribe to Eastern philosophy and yogic philosophy, I believe in previous lifetimes. So I believe that we've been reincarnated. So
Yeah.
we may be living out a karma in this lifetime from a previous lifetime, for instance. So I think we are given opportunities to even burn through that karma. Tapas yoga, as we build heat, is actually a way to burn through karma.
Nice.
But I don't know if I have a definitive answer about our dharma changing. I think we may have more than one dharma in our lifetime,
Okay.
and we're
Yeah.
constantly presented with opportunities to kind of work that out and experience it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I know it's hard to say, and this is this is philosophy really, and there's probably no
Yep.
specific answer. It's more just your
Right.
take on it and what your experience as somebody who's studied this and has been on the path for a while.
Correct.
Really, what your take is on it. I'd like
Yes.
to go back to samskara.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the yoga practices that I know you kind of touched on it briefly? But let's talk a little bit about it. We're talking about, again, samskara, habits, habitual
Yeah.
thought, right? So,
That's
what is
right.
some of your experience? What might your students experience in your class to help us burn through some of those habits? I've got a sugar habit. I really do. I have to wrestle
Yeah.
with it. And,
Yep.
I feel yeah, it will be interesting to think. I go into my arsenal of yoga postures to say, what do I do when I have that craving? Like maybe I would work
Yeah.
on some breath or just exercise at all. It's like, okay, why do you need more sweet right now? Am I
Right.
looking for energy? I think that's part of it. Like I
Yeah.
think there's going to be energy there. So
Yep.
I'm owning up to a habit of mine. So
One of your samskara.
yeah, and it is definitely a habit. So just curious if you have any examples you'd like to share.
Yeah. I mean, I think only because you're talking about sweets, it actually made me think of a quote from Sadhguru. I follow Sadhguru, who's a mystic and a yogi. And he actually said one time, the more sweet you become, the less you will crave sweets.
Aw,
So I don't know if that's truth,
that's beautiful.
but yeah, but I really like that when Sadhguru had mentioned that. But the reality is, I think whenever you remove something, the universe doesn't like a vacuum and it needs to be replaced with something. So to your point, if you're going to remove sweets and say, I'm not going to, what are you going to replace it with? And maybe it's not a food item, but maybe it's a phone call to a friend, or, maybe it's a walk, maybe it's going out for a walk and like moving the energy, or, something like that. But we have to be conscious and then be willing to choose differently. I think this is as it relates to sweets, but I think all of us have had experiences in life where we intellectually know what the right thing to do is, and yet we lack the courage to actually take the action. And so, whether it be the courage to take action, or the unwillingness to take the action, for instance, could be an issue with it as well. I think that's very much part of letting go of samskara, or wondering, like, if I let this habit go, what will I become? Because this you start to think that whatever habit you're carrying out is a part of your identity, when it's not. It's just a part of a habit, But it's also, I see it in yoga, where I always invite people to, whether it's take an extra vinyasa or back off of vinyasa, are you the person that's always pushing yourself? Do you always have to take it to the umpteenth degree? And I'm raising my hand because I am. And then ask yourself why. I remember very specifically one of my teachers in my class asking me this during a practice, and yoga again is about learning about ourselves. And I was able to really admit to myself that I like challenges. I like being challenged in life. Otherwise, I get bored. So I am always taking the extra, heated posture or the arm balance, regardless of if I fall on my face or not. Or are you the person that needs to push yourself a little more? Are you constantly opting out of opportunities for growth, for instance? So, samaskaras can be about a habit, as it relates to, like we're saying, sugar, or it can be a habit that may be imposing our, a limitation for growth in our life, for instance.
It's very, very interesting, and it can apply in so many different ways.
Yes.
I like hearing about it, and I was kind of thinking about your path because, as I'm sure with many people who practice yoga, you were a student for many years, and then
Yep.
you got to the point that you were ready to teach and share, and probably before you even took any certification courses, I'm sure you are already ready, because so much of it is really just authenticity and sincerity, right? Just
Yes.
really just
Yes.
a sincere love of how this practice has helped you and wanting to share that with others.
Yeah. I mean, I always said, actually, for a long time, that I didn't feel like my place was to teach. I didn't go into teacher training because I wanted to be a yoga teacher. I actually went to teacher training because I was super curious and I wanted to learn more. And through that process, my first training that I went to, a 200-hour teacher training, my teacher there told me, you should definitely teach.
Oh.
So I didn't start teaching right away. And then I ended up doing a 300-hour teacher training, and I started teaching from there. And, I believe, like in anything in life, you should only teach what you have experienced. And ultimately, what I'm teaching, yes, I learned how to teach and I learned the deeper aspects of yoga, but, I I mentioned that I didn't want to teach because I thought my expression of yoga in the world was about being the principles. So like we were talking about, living the principles of yoga off of the mat, which I still do. And I think is one of the most powerful ways of teaching, is the way that you show up in the world. So, I was an avid student for 20 years before I ever went to a teacher training. And, there's a conversation in the yoga community amongst teachers of, should you teach postures that you don't know how to do, for instance, on your own and in your own practice. And again, this is part of like there's no right or wrong, but I really respected a fellow teacher actually that I met in my 300 hour. His name is Nish. And he actually said he doesn't believe that you should teach postures if you don't know how to do them, because ultimately you're guiding people into a place that if you haven't been, you shouldn't be the guide ultimately, because it's not just about the physical posture. It's about what happens to you mentally when you go to these places. So I really I respect him as a teacher. I respect him as a student. And I really respected that kind of perspective on it, because I do think as yoga teachers, we have to live what we're teaching, and ultimately what I'm doing when I teach is I'm showing up and just sharing my experience with the practice.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we definitely look forward to seeing you in just a couple of weeks up in Santa Clarita. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask you for fun. Have you had any experiences that you would define as paranormal? And before you answer that, how, through your yoga practice, clearly you mentioned the energy channels, the movement of energy, right? The clarity that comes with it and intuition. So do you feel that through your practice, maybe that opens you up to the subtleties of life and some of the mysteries? Just curious if you've had any experiences.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think our yoga practice opens up our chakras. And I have some friends that do a lot of chakra work and have all told me that my crown chakra is very open. So I am very much open to otherworldly things that may not be tangible on the planet. And yeah, I actually have a friend who channels. And channeling was never my thing, quite honestly. But this was actually a month or two ago. She does like transformational kind of sessions. And we had a transformation session where she was going to be channeling for me, but I actually started getting downloads. It was
Wow.
wild. And this
Amazing.
was, yeah, I had never experienced this before. But I do believe that there are things out there that we can't see that have information. And yeah, I had a really profound experience actually with channeling with another person.
Fabulous. I love it. One of the ways that I like to get information is I love looking into nature and getting
Mm.
cues from nature. So
Yes.
it could be a certain type of bird, it can be maybe a shape of a cloud.
Yeah.
So, and with the birds, like crow has a certain meaning or vulture
Yeah.
has a certain meaning. That's one of the ways I like to do it. So there's a lot of information out there. And you mentioned this earlier about the different types of meditation and finding that quiet, because I have a long career that I worked in the music business. And so I
Yeah.
always had music on all the time. And I
Yeah.
found myself lately having a little less music on. And like maybe I'll be preparing lunch. I'm like, oh, I don't have any music on. I almost always do.
Right.
But I listen, there's information's coming through. Don't forget to call that
Mm.
person. Oh,
Yes.
maybe add this item to your grocery list. Just,
Mm.
and I mean, maybe it's maturity and I need to, whatever, I need that information. I'm not as quick
Yeah.
to always be having the thoughts, capturing the thoughts on the moment, on the
Sure.
fly. But I'm just going to say there's something kind of beautiful in that silence. And again, this practice can help people find it and benefit in different ways. Whether you're
Yeah.
pulling through a channel,
Yeah.
which may be one of the ways that people are experiencing extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
I've heard it from others, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of that channel is the Palladians, for example, or something like that, or a sense of the loss of the sense of someone who you've lost.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's uh I think maybe we can all relate to this when you're in the shower, things come to you.
Yeah, sure.
And right? I think we've all had this experience. This is actually very closely related to yoga because, as we were just talking about the eight limbs of yoga, pratyahara, inward turn, means that we're closing in our senses. So all day long, our five senses are out here like spidey senses, right? Our ears, our eyes, our nose, like we're taking things in through our five senses constantly. Our yoga practice and in the shower, we're actually shutting down some of our senses, which is why we start to get downloads or maybe remember something like you were just saying and things like that. So, absolutely, it requires an inward turn of some sort.
Nice. I like that with the shower. That's really
Yeah.
great. But don't take too long of showers if you live in California. We're in no
Yeah.
drought. Although the way things have been going lately, a little less so. You can go ahead and lengthen the shower a couple more
We've
minutes.
had a lot of rain.
But it's true. And I also feel like I want to say that there's something about the shower that is affecting our energy field, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
how could it not?
Yeah.
But I mean,
Totally.
sure, it's hitting our body, but I think there's something that's a little, beyond the subtleties around it as well. So that's really interesting. I really like that correlation a lot.
Yeah.
Jennifer,
Totally.
we really look forward to seeing you again. We hope that everybody will join us on April 1st in Santa Clarita for the first ever Parapod Festival and Awards event. We will be acknowledging the paranormal in different media. We certainly have a variety in addition to the yoga wisdom that Jennifer is going to bring. We will have a Native American spirits, mediums who will talk about ghost connection, hauntings, and true crime, and certainly amazing conversations about ufology with Linda Moulton Howell, Billy Carson, Robert Schock talking about ancient Egypt. So we hope that everyone has a chance to take a look at the website, which is parapodfestival.com, to learn more. We will see you there at April 1st. I look forward to meeting you. And Jennifer, I will be front and center at your class for sure.
Awesome. Look forward to it. Thanks so much, Bonnie.
Namaste. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, everybody.
Stay
Truth Be Told is on 4 days a week. Mondays live at 3 p.m. Pacific with Robert Hensley's Minuteman Report. We have Metaphor on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. en Espanol, talking about the mysterious in Latin. I am on Wednesdays with a new episode, and of course, Tony Sweet on Fridays at 3 p.m. live. Please join us. We are here for the conscious community. We are here to help you feel better, learn more, and live your brightest. Until the next time, I'm Bonnie Burkert. Thanks for listening.